Okay, starting a new video. We finished up the barbarians with the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. The Angles, I don't know if they're supposed to be on the map or not, because like they didn't get any reinforcements according to the track, and their horde's not on yet, but you know, they were part of an invasion last turn and still have units. There's no indication that the Angles are allied with the Saxons and Jutes, so they went first, then the Saxons and Jutes did, and they pretty much broke themselves against the Britons. They generated some points, but mainly for red for the Britons, by wiping themselves out. That will bring us to the empires, and the Persians, although they're just as old as the Britons, will be going first over there. And God knows what they want to do. Do I have 10 points of units? I don't know. But I looked in, or after I posted my last video, somebody pointed out that the newest version of the living rules, and I don't know what that is. I have 1.1F, just to show you how many times, you know, there have been significant rewrites where they had to release a new version of the living rules, right? And 1.1 sounds okay. F, you'd think is the minor version, but they changed apparently something that's not in my version, and I pulled mine down when I started this, actually a little after I started it. So, you know, in the last couple weeks, significant changes are still going in on this game that's been several months around. In this case, it was if a country, so I think it was if a country is a fetus, it cannot turn into a kingdom. Now, I'm not sure about that, about the decision there. It does seem like a cheap way to get out of it, but of course the fetus can always withdraw from being a kingdom. So given that it is the player's choice, I'm not sure I agree with that. So like the player has the option to renounce the fetus and become a kingdom, and that's fine. But if you're forced into becoming a kingdom, you could kind of avoid that for a long time and keep collecting those fetus points. And I'm not sure that's perfectly reasonable. It seems to me that that's kind of a means of evading the timers. And I would have to think about that more. But again, it feels like there are decisions being made that maybe are being made without a lot of thought. I would not be shocked if updates to the living rules get updated again. It just is such chaos. This thing is a total shitstorm. And, you know, this is not the environment for a Thibault game to be released. Honestly, I think, you know, the 1990s made a lot more sense. Maybe early 2000, where La Grande Guerre was there, and, you know, all that was posted was a series of questions and answers, basically, most of which were mine. As far as I know, that was the major, as it was up on WebGrogners. And you know, it's really kind of these games have to brew and let people figure out what actually works. They were not play tested, not adequately. That's clear, you know. And yeah, I mean, in this case, I don't know if there's an easy way to come to rules. I think each group comes to its own rules, and fuck it. Anything involving trying to keep up with the living rules as they keep changing is just ridiculous, you know. It could be someday somebody rewrites the rules completely who is not associated with the game, but is able to glean what the game is trying to do in a way that I can't. You know? Reference to that point, it's actually in the original rules. It's over here. the Fetis cannot found a kingdom, which has one effect: the transition die roll, the automatic die roll, is canceled. So, you know, I mean, I'll play with it from now on, but I do have my disagreements with it. Now, it's not where you need it, which is when you're looking up to see that things transition to kingdom. I may have had some question. I may have looked around a bit. I may have even looked in here. I think I was more worried about the submitted nations being forced into a kingdom, which felt a little weirder. But yes, there's a prohibition against being a fetus and turning into a kingdom. You have the option, though, again, as the nation under fetus, to renounce your fetus and become free to transition. So had I wanted to transition, I certainly could have. It just... There was, basically, there's strong reasons you don't want to renounce a fetus. In fact, that you don't want to lose your fetus in any sense by becoming a kingdom. So the main thing is, it was a victory point penalty to force the Franks into that. And Red is doing tremendously well on victory points, so I'm not too worried about that. It may have also helped them overall, though... I don't know. They certainly were able to... They certainly did not want to be... They wanted to be a kingdom this turn. Because they wanted to produce all those forces that they were able to produce. And possibly, I don't know, the fetus kind of locks them down to certain land that they can't leave. And that would have put me up in Flanders, which... I am not in right now, which might have reduced my total number of points. I don't know. So I did half the Persian turn. Each of the leaders gets a campaign now. They got their 20 points by attacking the Byzantines, but they basically got no points on their own off of it. And, I mean, now comes the big question. Can I do anything to get me anything here? Egypt, Phoenicia, Syria, those are pretty far away. The two Armenias, Azaria, Ozerhon, and Palestine. Ozerhon is over here. Palestine's obviously too far away. I'm trying to see if there's anything I want to go kill myself to get. Azaria, I think, is this space. It just looks like it's too far in. On the other hand, maybe I can disrupt Green's points. I don't really think I can do much against the Romans. I made a shot, and... could I get to Egypt? No, them. 1, 2, 3. He only has one campaign. He couldn't get there. Yeah, I don't see an easy way through that would get me anywhere valuable. So maybe my best situation is to try to bust up that control of Persia. And now I have to start thinking about what it means to control Persia. Well, at this point, this is controlled because I control all the provinces. Unless by empty they mean not including city. But again, they use the urban-rural for that, not empty, non-empty. And that distinction is very clear. Although, again, you could make arguments either way. So I would have to take 2 spaces from them, and we get this. I probably get points for barbarians. They do. It might be worth it just to bone someone who's kind of a threat to me right now. The problem, didn't I have to fill in all these areas in Persia? So I started rolling interception attempts as we're crossing into here, and I thought I had to get everything to get this. Like, I had to be in all the areas I'm in. So I'm going to have to recount all these Epithatias to see what happens. Now, here's the problem, though. If I lose this, I lose anyway. So But I could retreat to somewhere like Atropatene, and as long as the siege fails, still keep Persia, and all kind of crazy shit. And it's just a matter of, my God, there's all these little tiny things that interrelate to create this area control, and it's not intuitive, and it doesn't work well, and it doesn't absorb into my little brain very well, and it just fucking sucks. I had to look this up. I can't overrun this because there's a fortified city there, but I actually could overrun this, which might be my better option. So instead of going into here, let's just rethink this. I can give this up fine because I still control Mesopotamia, I think. I don't know. So I would need 6 to 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll need another unit. So let's call on something, and I don't know. Yeah, let's restack, but if I overrun this, then I can get there and I can submit them if they don't fall back. And that gets me all kind of cool stuff because then I get Persia. The interception die rolls allow me to gather everybody together, and now I no longer own Persia, and it's not valuable anymore. Oh, unless there's an overrun of hordes. What the fuck? I don't know. I don't fucking see anything with that. So I'm going to ignore that possibility because that was an undefended horde. Maybe I could just get a hit on it. I don't know. Well, let's see. Maybe it's in submission rules. I don't see anything about that. So now the barbarians have just given up Persia, which was their big point thing. And I'm not sure what the fuck happens with the Persians if they win this battle, because I'm not going to have enough action. I've used my one campaign. I'm not going to have another campaign to spread out all over Persia. Who knows? A little overstacked, so I moved units out to better areas. So this is kind of cool because it'll allow it a siege, and I'll put that there. And then this is where the battle's going to happen. And that's kind of cool, actually. Although I will gain this either way because I own Mesopotamia. So I don't actually have to siege it because I own it as soon as he leaves. And yeah, I think so. What sucks is I feel like I'm making up rules based on these area control rules. Like, this just doesn't seem reasonable. Like, the enemy retreats from here. I walk in, no die rolls or anything. It's mine because I own Mesopotamia and he's no longer there, so therefore I own it because it's empty. What? I don't know. I was able to overrun it. And I'm not really sure that I did. I'm going to put a die there and say I have to siege it, because I don't think there was ever a time when it was empty. I was there after I overran it. Now it's on the Britons, and I have marked the areas they're interested in addition to these. And they're interested in more than that, but basically it looks like all of Britain. But here's the thing, the red areas are their hot spots. I want to get those covered. But I would like to submit somebody. I have a campaign, so I can move around. I think there's a possibility of the Jutes intercepting if I go attack the Saxons. But getting one of the nations to submit seems, and vice versa, getting one of the nations to submit seems like a good idea. I don't know which one I'd rather hit. I could look at the victory points that Green and Tan have collected, and I would say Tan is my bigger worry because of the Persians. This is history of the world type thinking here, but also Britannia. So I had to go slam them, I guess. And then, you know what, these are the easier to hit out of the two. So after I spread out some troops, I might be able to do that. I reasonably say that using markers in a situation like this is just goofy, and I agree completely. If it weren't for the fact that I was hunting down each location and covering them as I went, if I realized these three are valuable, the rest in England and Wales and Cornwall was all the next layer of valuable, I could have just remembered that. The problem was getting to that piece of knowledge, and I'm like, go fucking leave them there. All right, so the Saxons intervened, and we'll do the damn battle. Submitting another nation. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we get a leader movement bonus in this game. I seem to remember seeing that. I know there's like some kind of invasion movement bonus, which is also present, that I remember being referred to, but, jeez. The idea being, this is the maximum points. I could submit the Saxons, but I would rather not, because I can get more points by spreading out. Now it looks more like a Britannia style game, except that there's people stacked together because of the alliance or whatever, but you know, where you're covering all the territory to get income. Income's not that important here. I got tons of, well, no, I don't. I got a problem. I'm not gonna be able to afford my card. And I've already gotten 2 turns worth, haven't I? Because this is turn 6, those guys came in turn 5, so they're gonna go bankrupt. And end up in decline, and that's going to hurt them in time for Arthur, which sucks, but you know, whatever. I can't figure it out anymore. And the Germans are the next nation to go. Submission marker there. I'm using Roman style submission marker up here because that's not going to get confused with the Britons, and that's fine. But I start facing this and realizing I have to do this shit again, where I have to figure out all the provinces, and there's just too many. You know, I mean, another one of the things in the Britannia style games, Hispania sort of becoming an exception, but nowhere near on this level, is, hey, you know, what do I need to control? All right, it's a few areas. There are generally a couple of turns, like that Danish turn or whatever, where there's something complex, a whole set of different areas that are all over the place and stupid. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty bad in most of them. But the victory point thing is just the worst part of the game. And it's the one thing that they most translated for this. Like, that is the thing this is closest to Britannia, is let's get people to go where they want to go by giving them victory points to go there, even though there's no reason in God's name that various barbarians would be interested in one particular peninsula over another or whatever, you know. There's just no reason for them to historically end up where they ended up as barbarian wandering tribes. They should go where it's easiest to move. Maybe with different options, you know, so that you don't end up all trying to settle in Gaul or something. But yeah, I don't like that mechanism I don't think that mechanism works here. But then, but my bigger problem is the massive number of spaces makes it fucking obnoxious. And so here, this is what I got. Lotharingia, okay, I think that's here, and I'm there. Australasia and Neustria. Neustria's over here. Australasia, I think, maybe this. I'm not going to be able to get those easily. I don't have, well, see, I have a fairly big force and I could submit them, and here's the problem. They go after me, so if I don't submit them, I'm probably going to be the one who's submitted, because I'll be spread out all over hell and creation, and I just don't fucking want to think about it. Agri Decume, which I think is back here, but it's getting worse less. And Flandria, yeah, whatever, shop. And then each Gallic gets me 1, Gallic Northern. And if I own all of Gaul, I get 10, all of Northern Gaul. But, okay, I don't have to deal, yeah, I would have to deal with these Burgundians. They've slipped over. They're in Northern Gaul, these are in Southern Gaul. The Romans are in Southern Gaul, that helps. So, like, if I could launch an attack, say, against the Suebi, and then launch a follow-up attack on the Franks, I would be in pretty good shape, and the Burgundians may leave. They're a different player, but maybe they're not interested. No, that's their capital, Burgundy. Yeah. So I'm not going to get the big bonus, but I might get a pretty nice bonus. Raises another question. What happens if one of my submitted nations submits another nation? If they're not allowed to do it, then do they kill the horde? That would be a problem. And I know that if I submit the Franks and am submitted myself, I lose the Franks. They just disassociate. But what I'm not sure about is I don't think there's a restriction against submitting someone if you are yourself submitted. I would say that you wouldn't get the victory points of the double vassal, of the second level of vassal, even though that's kind of how feudalism works. But again, I'm just starting to make shit up here, you know, and maybe it's in the rules somewhere, but damned if I know. I can't think of anything about it. And Jesus, I don't fuck. Like, I'm trying to convince myself to go on and make this attack and see what happens. And then from that, make a decision of what to do, you know, whether to go for the Franks too. Once again, the answer is not in the living rules as far as I can tell. My copy, which is 1.1F. But again, it could be hidden somewhere that wouldn't make any sense. Or maybe I just missed it. I did look carefully again. You know, questions like this coming up, I can't imagine that this question wouldn't come up while you're playtesting it, right? And that the playtest group would stop and send this question and say, we can't play. This is the kind of question that I imagine would come out during the very, very easiest kind of playtests of where the designer's playing it with other players, perhaps. And they ask him a question, and he just answers the question without looking it up to see if it's there. Even when I've playtested things with the designer at the table, they wanted us to read the rules, you know, and try to come up with questions and interpretations of the rules so that he would know to clarify them there. Obviously, there's just nothing like that going on here. The only thing I can guess is that the playtest group is the designer and his friends playing the game a couple of times and saying, you know, yeah, I got a kind of good idea here. It's like it went through no development. It really, I mean, and honestly, I don't know. I don't want to compare, because EU, most of the really problematic stuff is squirreled away in the events. Here, it feels like it's sitting in the main play of the game. You know, this concept of submission and vassalage is key, and somewhere there should be either a prohibition, well, there should be some handling of what happens if the Suebi attack the Franks. If the Suebi are vassalized, they'll be free to attack the Franks who are not, you know, who are still hostile. And if they somehow force them into vassalage. I think forcing the Franks into vassalage is pretty fucking hard, though. I gotta capture their capital for that to work. So the Suebi seem like the better option. And then maybe I spread out and do what I can. What I'm realizing is these guys are green, those guys are green. These guys don't look green. But do I want to vassalize my own people? Well, I don't have to. I can't wipe them out, but I could try to retreat before combat. See, the Suebi want to get down into Hispania. They, I think, wait, maybe not. Where do they want to go? No, this is the Alemanni. Yeah, the Suebi, I think, want to get down. Yeah, they want to get to Hispania, and they basically get jack shit. If they don't make it there. On the other hand, I kind of don't want to wipe them out. I don't have the option of something easy to cheat here, though. Like, I gotta kind of hit them with the whole army to chase them out of there. So, I don't know. Yeah, and I'm looking at the next players being just as hard. It's going to be the Franks after the Alemanni. They're just as painful. Then I got the Ostrogoths and the Burgundians. So all the kingdoms are going to have this kind of mess. I've placed this on the locations that are most important to me. I don't want to get this because I don't want to kill them, especially since the Franks want to kill them. I don't really want to go up against Clovis. He's potent. I could go beat up on the poor, what are these, Alans here? Yeah, the Alans are still trying to find their way somewhere. But they're kind of clogged back. Or I could just kind of defend myself down here, which is feeling kind of appropriate because the flanks are going to be pretty potent. So I'll just fucking do that. But then I'm done. Clovis with a major invasion and his big 3 campaigns. I hope I got that right, but I believe, yeah, still 1. Big 3 military value. It was tight, but he managed to take the Suebe out. That took the 2 invasion turns, basically. He didn't get lucky on the first shot and hit the horde. So they're submitted now. And then he spread out a little bit. Well, he spread out to there. Smashed into the Alemanni. Defeated them initially. That's his first action. Second campaign, he smashed into their capital. He knocked them out, but didn't manage with the siege. So he had to fall back. And then they were pretty weak at this point, so he spread out to this space, 1, 2, and then back in. An interception, won the battle easily, racked up a lot of points for the Franks. They got 16 points so far in the turn, plus they're going to get most of their victory points for the turn, as a matter of fact, because they managed to submit, and I'm using a marriage counter instead of a submission counter, which is not correct, but whatever. I don't really need the marriage counters. They don't serve a lot of purpose in my view. And oh look, I got me another unit, which I'll put into play. But basically, I've captured most of the territory I desire, the territory that I mostly desired, and got myself a couple of vassals. So this is pretty historical looking for the Franks to like kick ass and take over a big hunk of Gaul at this point. So I was looking up the alliance of the Goths because they want to take a lot of territory. They're allied with the Visigoths, so that is one of the aspects. They get to borrow a unit as well, which is very helpful. What they're going to want to do is they're going to want to submit whoever these are, the Herculi or whatever, because that'll get them Umbria, which they want to have possession of. But they want to sack Rome and make their way to the south. They also want to make their way over here. It's going to be hard to do both. They don't have a major invasion. All they have is a leader with 2 extra, Theodorus, who can take some advances in certain areas. I don't think I'm going to push too far into Illyria. That doesn't look of value to me. I got to look to see. Illyria is actually owned by these guys, the Gepidae. So if I move into Illyrian territory, they could intercept me beyond this, which is not theirs. So I think I'm going to ignore that, even though this is like a slightly valuable space. More than slightly. They have a lot of points each, so that's actually 5 points, I think, for Istria. That's a lot of points to give up, but I got bigger points heading down, smack the Romans around maybe, if I'm lucky. But I noticed something that I hadn't been paying attention to, of course, which is under the Goths, the Slavic tribes, which are controlled by the Romans, but they are interacted with initially by them. These 3 things, I don't know what the hell happened should have happened to them, they weren't allowed to leave their home provinces. They would also have been submitted and unable, and would have to move to follow the force they were submitted to. So I'm just going to leave them where they are and assume that that submission allowed them to move. It's the only way that they can move anyway, although some of their retreats and stuff were illegal as well. So screw it, man. But if you were following in the rules and saying, what the fuck, those things shouldn't be moving. Yeah. Screwed that one up. No big deal. Much less than other screw-ups that I've had. All right. Let's do the Ostrogoths. The Ostrogoths mainly succeeded in what they were trying to do. Let me get the Visigoth mercenary back. They captured a good part of things. They took Rome. They looted it. There's something interesting about Rome. I can't find a roll on it. I thought there was extra pillage value for Rome. There's places, some people get extra victory points for looting Rome. There's a raised side to it. Maybe it's in an event or something. I can't find it in the Rome book, and obviously it's not in the Ostrogoth book. Maybe it's in some other book, like if the barbarians loot Rome, they destroy it or something. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. This game is, filled with things that maybe just you're left with these questions, and some of the questions are things along the lines of, well, maybe that counter means something if there's an event card. Maybe there's no event card for it. Who the fuck knows? The reality is, during this period, Rome did basically disappear as a city, and it was a level 3 city here that I looted. That hasn't gone away. Should it? Again, I don't know. I couldn't find anything. I looked in the glossary, of course, which doesn't have anything. I looked in the income because Rome has an additional plus 10 on it, which it does not have. It's not the capital of Rome, right? That's one of the problems here. I didn't want to dismantle the walls. I didn't particularly, I wasn't so sure about looting it, but I wanted the extra cash because otherwise I might have a bankruptcy with my Ostrogoths, and I'd rather not have that happen. Otherwise, what did I do? I did something kind of weird here. I attacked the Heruli before I submitted them. I didn't have to do that. Now, and the Romans chose not to try to intercept, which may have been iffy, but it saved them a couple of units, and maybe they can do something in northern Italy and regain something or another, somewhere or another, somehow or another. Who the hell knows? With this game, you're basically trying to, where you're not making up rolls, you might be making them up that are already in place, by the way. You're desperately digging through to find the rules. The rules may exist, they may not. You just throw your hands up and say, fuck it. The rule book is too much of a pain, and certainly the idea of trying to cope with a living rule book, not the thing I paid for, a written game, a physical copy, right? It's bad enough they didn't ship with the scenario book and God knows what else. That's all online if you want that. But yeah, and I kind of don't trust that. I get the feeling because they ran out of money for shipping. They collected a lot of money per copy, and then kind of made a beg-a-thon type thing. Hey, we ended up with not enough money for shipping. The whole thing was it was either horribly organized or they didn't have any idea what they were charging for. But if you run out of money for shipping, doesn't that kind of put a little bit of suspicion in your head of, maybe they were running low and canceled those things that never came or whatever. It was just, the whole thing is just such a shit show. across the board. I don't trust Kickstarters to begin with. Here, I'm willing, you know, to a large extent, I bought this game as a thank you for the prior 2 games that he's written. But my patience and magnitude, that pleasure has all been kind of worn away, whatever value there is from that, by facing this whole situation. Like, Kickstarters have me very, very worried to begin with. I have done some Kickstarters. This was one of 2 that I did this year. I've been holding off on doing them, but the other one was the only way. No, one of 3 I've done this year, actually. And, you know, like my prior Kickstarters, my experiences are highly mixed. The first one I did was great. The second one was Lincoln's War, and that had me sworn off them. Then this year I did 3 of them because, you know what? There was this, the only way I could get it. There was the War and Peace reprint, which I thought was going to be more interesting than it looks like it is. It's pretty close to a straight reprint, from what I can see, other than the graphical updates. You know, there's new stuff on the maps. There's some stuff around the fringes on the campaign rules that I don't think fixes the issue, if I recall correctly. I know I read through it and felt like, and then there's like a little played thing that helps explain how to use the movement and combat system, and I've never really grasped that properly, and trying to figure that thing out, I still don't grasp it. Like, I feel like there's something much more subtle in that game than there's supposed to be. And then the third one is 1817, and I hope the hell that one pans out as something decent. That was the most expensive of the lot, I think, and because, yeah, I feel like my 1 out of 2 ratio before has kind of drifted down in terms of happiness, you know. This has made me very miserable, but I'll say this much. I would have been maybe more miserable not buying this and knowing of its existence, still hearing people say that it was a complete waste of their money or whatever. It would prey on me and I'd have to get it eventually. So, I probably did the right thing. All right. And I chose not to buy a mercenary. I didn't have much money. I used some events. But I didn't, so somebody used events, you know, I mean, it's how the cards work, right? They just fit into the narrative and fuck them and they're gone. Who did something? Somebody did a saint, the Germans did a saint to prevent a siege, right? Okay. The chits, just too hard to look up. But apparently this was too hard to look up too. I would have perhaps raised the value of this city to a 2. I don't know though, because it's going to be a lot better when I'm spread out more to make myself richer, I think. I don't know. I got the Burgundians to do. I think I'm too fucking tired to deal with them. And yeah, you know, I thought, yeah, I'm slowing down again. Never mind. I'll just go to bed. So here's what Gaul is interested in. They have one of the key areas. I'm sorry, the Burgundians are interested. They have one of the key areas. They are interested in total control, I guess. I mean, it's written as all of Gallia Meridionis, which is southern Gaul. I assume they have to get control, and that means getting the Romans out of there. And that seems like too big a goal. So I'm going to focus on getting the greens, which are my next most valuable, and the blue areas, which, and it should be pretty easy for me to steal the Alemanni capital, submitted Alemanni capital, as long as I can win a siege. That's the only difficulty with that. A very nice trick up my sleeve. These two cards don't matter, but I have this sedition card, which at the end says, if a successful check, then many details in the appendix. Well, basically, I can make Roman units desert. Well, I can make up to 2 vassal auxiliary and our federate units in the stack will desert, and 2 other Roman barbarians might also switch. So if I get lucky on that roll after a Roman interception, I may actually end up stronger than one would think if I have some cash. And how much cash is it going to cost? 5 or 10 if there's a leader, and there is at least 1 stack with a leader. Oh, good. I actually turned out not to have as much money. I mistook the Ostrogoth, so I had the money, and now I'm pinned, and I see problems. Burgundians have taken a number of the valuable areas, victory point-wise. They didn't end up getting this, which is one of their second tier. And they also didn't manage to take Gaul away from the Romans even. And conceivably Rome could knock them back. They're kind of the major... So the question is, sure, I lost my leader, by the way. The Roman leader assassinated as usual. The Romans can't really interfere with all their forces against, say, the Ostrogoths. So they're going to have to spend some of them against the Burgundians, I think. That looks like the most likely place, although, you know, I think these are both Frankish. Deciding, you know, how painful this is means that I walk away more often. And so it's hard to remember who has submitted who. Because again, there's no little flags or anything. There's just these markers. But they're certainly not Roman. But I think they are. I think they're Frankish submitters. And so, what does that mean? We failed to submit the Alemanni, which again, that was the other of the second tier places. So we kind of did not get as much as we wanted by any means. The thing is, I think I lost Africa to the Vandals by losing my forces here as the Romans. Africa stretches out to here. Well, I certainly lost Africa. Who owns it is the question. I've got a horde here. There's nothing else. I think I control the whole area. You think? Not sure. Notably, nobody else has a horde there. So, I don't think that was the intention at all. But so yeah, I think the Africans have captured Africa, or the Vandals have captured Africa, kind of without a fight. And there's not much I can do about that. I can't. It doesn't pay for me to use the abandon rolls, because if I abandon Africa, I own none of it, so I get no victory points and I lose victory points. And those abandonment rules are kind of weird. Like, it's better to be conquered, I guess, in almost all circumstances. So I don't know why those rules exist. Yeah. Western Rome is making several contests. They're not able to get into a good position because the king is here and failed to intercept anywhere, basically. They're not able to make any significant attempts to subjugate the Burgundians. However, they are making an attempt on the Ostrogoths. And we'll see how that works out. And significantly less good results against the Ostrogoths. And I don't know what the hell's going on here anymore. I have no idea who owns Rome, who owns Italy. This was Roman. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cities in Italy. I don't believe there are any off here. The Ostrogoths own 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Okay, well, clearly Rome doesn't own the province. Do the Ostrogoths own half of Italy, though? I don't think so. So I think it's just the only territories that people own is where they have armies. So like the Ostrogoths were driven out of here, but Rome failed to siege it. Now it's an independent territory. And this is kind of the weird thing about it. It makes sense, but it's hard to grasp in terms of like what you want to do, etc. All right, I think that's the end of the Romans, and I wonder if, oh well, I'll tilt them because they're getting their buck for diplomacy from that. And now we go to the Byzantines, and we're almost done with this turn, which has been kind of a hellish turn. Of course, we still have to count victory points because it is a victory point turn. Ugh. The Byzantines also have victory points. Fine, you know, some of them are over where I'm playing and I have my army. A bunch of them are over here in Illyria. I guess they're supposed to go take it at this point. Yeah, well, the Huns kind of drove us out and we're not over there, so those are points we're not going to get, but there are some cool bonus points. We get cool bonus points for Oriens if we have control of it all, which we will not because there's a revolt there which we can't suppress at this point. So that one's gone. The other one's for Mesopotamia, which generates 10 victory points if we could take it. I don't think that's viable for me. Whereas I could grab these islands if I move my boats. Cyprus is the hard one to get to. I would have to shift my boat from the Black Sea, basically, in order to be able to do that. So that's a possibility. I think I get Armenia as a client state. Otherwise, most of these I have. Now, here's a problem. I'm reading Assyria as Syria, but that may not be correct. Then again, it may be. Because I don't remember there being an Assyria anywhere back here. So, again, you know, name things different things. Assyria is not a reasonable name for anything at this point. But it is certainly not a reasonable name. Oh, there it is. Hold on. Let's get that out of there. There we go. I was going to say, certainly it is not applicable to put that around Damascus. Assyria was further up here, and now I found it. And it may have been, you know, a satrapy or something. And luckily for me, I already have that. So I've got most of what I want in the east. Is there any chance I can get over here? Well, I have no leaders, so the answer to that is probably not, because I just don't have the kind of oomph of movement. But I might be able to restore some things that I've lost, like Greece. Now, if I can take Greece proper, which would involve, I think, just these two cities. If I take both of them, I think, actually I only need one of them. Then I conquer Greece proper. But the problem with that is then, you know, I get these for free in that case, and that's awesome. But it's kind of an iffy chance as to whether or not I can get them. This is a fairly complicated turn where the Byzantines are trying to conquer a number of cities. I am actually putting little cubes to try to indicate that. Now, I don't know if I have to siege these cities in revolting provinces or not. I think so. But maybe not if I control the province, and in both cases I control the province. So I'm leaving that alone and not rolling sieges for them, just using them as that. But I'm trying to figure out where to put my units. I'm going for the Greek strategy of get the islands by taking an extra city and just taking Greece. Do I own Moesia? I don't know if I own Moesia. I may just own it. No. No. See, this is part of Moesia, and that's kind of complicated. Unless Sarmatia gets another city, which I don't even know if it can. I can get one here. Get one over here. Okay. I think, it's so hard to tell the borders here. But yeah, I mean, I have to put little markers down to tell me where I'm sieging, because otherwise it just looks like I control the area, right? Because there are no control markers, nothing to distinguish, hey, I gotta fight this. And you can't just use city markers, because the city markers are kind of used as neutral markers because the city values change and their wall values and everything change. So there's no real shortcuts available. Strategy succeeded, but not much else did. And in fact, I went for a Meta, and I got this. I think I actually own Mesopotamia, but I don't own all of it. It's hard to tell. That's 1, 2, 3 cities owned by the Persians, I think. 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 cities owned by the Byzantine. Actually, I don't think anybody owns it. I'm not sure because I don't know who owns Amida. Did I take anything this turn from the Persians? That would be the question. I did. I took this. So yes. So Persia, I think, still owns this. I'm not sure. Well, no, because Persia is a kingdom, not an empire, so they don't own it either. So neither side owns it, and clearly it doesn't matter about Amida because, yeah, Persia no longer owns it. So Mesopotamia is unowned, so nobody gets anything they're not sitting in. And now I already did this for the Romans, but now I gotta pick pieces up, and this was one of the problems. I besieged Amida with a Cappadocian unit. Of course, if I had taken it, I would have enough territories, but I'm just short, so I don't end up getting anything out of it. But like, yeah, these guys are going to leave here, and I will no longer own Babylon because I used Syrian units to siege that. And that's a really hard thing to keep track of. Hey, are my units going to just leave and I'm going to lose the province because of it? To the totals in a little bit. But playing these out, nobody showed anything too terribly impressive. The Franks were a pretty good score, getting to a total of 46, because remember, they've submitted the Alemanni and the Suebi, and are in pretty good shape. The Britons, they probably got a fair amount too. They got to 35 for the total turn. This puts them in Roman side points, right? And the Eastern Romans got 38. Yeah, I'm talking about points now. They got a total that's huge off of all this, though, which was 145, which, I mean, clearly you're not supposed to be doing this well with red. But again, I've made some errors in their favor. Green pretty much crapped out, with Suebi getting nothing, the Diafilade doing okay at 16 points. The Saxons, Alemanni, getting a few points, but under 10 each off the point thing. But then, the reason I had to come back, and I have not gotten to the blues players' pieces yet, we'll see what they work out, but yellow scored some big points. Not as big as Rome. I don't have the total. It'll be close. So Persia, 27 points, 20 of which was burn my army against Rome, which may have been a mistake, except that I don't think I could have gotten much more off the turn, because the things I want are deep in Rome. So that was probably the best I could do. The Alani, nothing. They're not submitted anymore, but they're also nowhere near where they want to be. They want to be in Hispania. But now things start getting interesting. The Vandals scored basically all of Africa and a little bit more. They had other things they wanted. They totaled to 45 points. Pretty solid. The Heruli did not get to where they wanted to go. I don't think they scored a single point off the victory point side of things, but they did score a lot of points during the turn, so they got 19 points for the turn. But the Gepidae got Danubis, right? And that was my goal, and nobody broke it. That ended up being worth, including other things, 63 points in total. I think it was a 45-point shift for that. Remember, they had like a major invasion or something and all kind of crap to do. But they got what they wanted, and they got a good score off of it. They're not a kingdom yet. They might be. And then to the Jutes, who actually scored pretty well overall, but they got like 7 points off this, but they totaled at 19. Now we get to the Blues. For the yellow player came out actually even higher, 173. And remember, they're the ones who are kind of keeping up with the Romans because they've been cranking 20 points per turn from the Persians. I mean, not as well. Look, the Romans are getting near 100 points, while I'm getting 20 and 40. But still, a clear second place here. This one is a lot harder to say, I think I've been cheating in favor of yellow. Anyway, on to the blue player. The only really interesting, the Burgundians kind of crapped out. They ended up with a total of 24 points for the turn. They lost most of the territory they had. Again, they could have scored a lot more if Rome had collapsed this turn or something, right? But, you know, the fact that that they were on the Roman border, they were the ones that got hit. The Visigoths completely shit because they aren't able to make it to Spain. Now, to some extent, you might actually want to create a civilized nation so you can maybe fight a naval war and make your way over to Spain that way, because, I don't know, Rome is preventing us from being able to push through Gaul. But the biggie here was the Ostrogoths, who ended up scoring a total of 44 points. Again, they didn't get all of Italy, nor any of the Illyrian stuff they wanted, but they still scored a healthy amount, and that got us to 72. So green crapping out totally at only 24 total. I think that's the end of the turn. I don't know what's going on, in the sense that tomorrow's dancing, and I may come back. I mean, I'm going to keep playing this as far as I'm concerned, but I may come back and play, you know, I've only played a couple of turns since the last game I played, but my intention had been to go 4 turns, which would get me to here, and then I'd be on a victory point turn right away. However, the effort to get through this turn in particular, but honestly both the turns, has been so high that I don't know. I may decide to do something else instead. Put these here. And but then again, I might come back and play these turns right away. So I don't know. And that is where we are with you know, the Byzantine Empire sort of starting to resurge back into the Balkans a little bit. The Romans, a chaotic mess that I don't expect to survive very long. But of course, even if they collapse, it will still be a chaotic mess of all those barbarians, and there will still be Roman residue present. The Ostrogoths putting themselves in a position to take Italy, but, you know, Rome has to fail, the Visigoths have to get out, stuff like that. That may not happen. Persia under siege from both sides and in a lot of trouble. Although, you know, they carved back and at least took the points away from those Hephathalatae. I don't know. You know, Hispania completely vacant because all the people who want to get there have been cock-blocked from getting there. And other barbarians have no desire and feel no pressure from the hordes that are pushing behind them to switch their desires to go there. And that is where I feel this game fails the biggest. Yes, I mean, look, you know, the rules are a mess. The game is essentially unplayable. Those are bigger failures in a sense, but if it has any sort of, lodestar that you should be aiming for, it's that you would be seeing barbarian migrations that work like they should, and trying to use the Britannia model when people can't get through one another, when there's traffic jams, when the actual reasons that people went into Hispania was there was pressure coming from the north, and this was largely available to them. In the sense that Rome couldn't defend it, it was prime pickings, and they could just move through and keep going forward. The other thing is the attempt to make the hordes movement that says, hey, you can't attack, but attack isn't really defined very well. Honestly, what really happened with these barbarians is they moved through Gaul almost unopposed. So that cannot attack is appropriate, right? But not in the sense of like cannot attack, cannot take territory. They moved into territory and just kind of clustered there and lived off the land and didn't really, and not just the land, but they didn't really seek to conquer the territories. And then they all sort of struck at once with, yeah, we're going to settle here, we're going to settle here. So like the pressures of the barbarian hordes, just as historically has happened again and again, sweeping in from the east, pushed them down into here. And that's the mechanism that I think the game should be portraying, is that pressure that's moving the forces from the east to the west. And that's not what it feels like. What it feels like is, oh, I'm the Vandals. I got to make it to Africa. The only way is through here. So I do the historical if I can make it. I'm the Alani. I got to make it to Hispania. Oh, look, I can't. So now I'm stuck in Germany, and I'm not settling in Germany. That's obviously, so one of the other factors is the opportunism of a declining Rome, which allowed these barbarians to, see riches and wealthier territory that they could occupy and live off of in a way that they weren't finding it as easy. So it was the population pressures in Germany. They're pressing them forward, and then that pressure just keeps pushing them further and further. And who ended up where is not a factor of, well, I'm the Vandals, I want to live in Africa. That model works fine if you want to represent things in some stupid little, really abstract version like Britannia. And that's why I say the level of detail in this game is just not appropriate for that Britannia model. This takes too much from that model and just doesn't capture the actual desires to push. I feel like there's another game that could be designed here. But I felt the same way about Imperium Romanum, that, oh look, there's some other game that could represent the broader forces of history on Rome, and then like in Grand Cycle, which is over here somewhere, the concept there of, you play some turns where not a lot's happening, and then you focus in because this is the time when the wars are happening, whatever. So what I really wanted to see, or what I would really want to see, and this game sparks that interest again, is something that handles the military side in fair amount of detail. This is enough detail, and maybe it's more pleasing than the Imperium model, which I really fucking hate, but this one's less well defined, and it's kind of hard to understand and to make it work. So get rid of the detail. I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with something that presented this in a more fluid fashion, but that represented the real pressures that were moving these peoples around. Something that maybe dealt less in that military side and focused more on something that I do not know of a game that does it. You know, the games are either simplistic to an extreme, or like Imperium Romanum, it's just snapshots of wars, of periods of great conflict, which is an interesting subject, but it's not what this game is about at all. And what this game is supposed to be about is what I wanted to see in Imperium Romanum, was, you know, what are the pressures on Rome, especially if you go with the before the invasions, which I don't know what years this takes. Be interesting. I don't even know if I read this one. I know I looked into the East, but like it looked like, wow, it's more special rules. I don't know how many years before this goes, but I'd really be interested in something, honestly, something that showed the pressures from the Republican period to the Imperial to the barbarian invasions. But if you want to do something with just the barbarian pressures, I got no problem with that. I think that's a very interesting subject matter. And I just don't think that this does the model that, you know, lets you learn anything. What you learn is, oh, look, the Vandals want to go to Africa. The Alani want to go to Spain for no apparent reason. It does not show the reasons why. And the military model is just not detailed enough to be a valuable or, you know, interesting pedagogical tool to look at how the military worked in that period. Imperium Romanum is, in terms of the detail, it just kind of doesn't work. As far as I'm concerned. Some people seem to think it does. But this just does not do what it needs to do, and it doesn't handle all those lead weights hanging on the Christmas tree well enough to justify them at all. And those lead weights, that's the amount of military detail that this does have. I would much rather see something that was far more abstract and handled the population pressures, the pressures on the government, hate as Rome fall and everything. And I'm not worried necessarily about how balanced the game ends up being. I know that Thibault is unable to design a balanced game, so I wasn't counting on that anyway. But I was counting on something that gave a view that made more sense. And this one doesn't seem to have that spark that even Europa Universalis kind of had, even though I felt like... So one of the things is the design that I would come up with, which is this hybrid mess using Imperium Romanum and like some kind of Grand Sequel type, well, randomize who gets to be where and why. I didn't like the idea of that, and my hope here was that Thibault would have come up with something where he cut through a corner that I couldn't see around, you know, and gave me something that maybe I could tinker with, tweak with, whatever, and use. And instead what I've got is a really badly designed thing on the Britannia model. It is not showing anything that I find particularly interesting, except how to optimize points, you know, under a lot of chaos. Where I give up the thought, here's what might help a lot. And there's too many special rules and stuff for it to work perfectly for me, but if you controlled nations, like the blue nations, but picked your victory point cards, essentially by what happened. So, basically you could accomplish any of the victory point cards. You could do whichever ones you want. If you want to settle in Gaul and let the other barbarian hordes slam into you as they try to accomplish their goals, that's fine. But another alternative is, hey, if you make it through to Hispania, now you could settle here too. But again, you've got more forces coming. So by picking your victory point cards, based on how well and where you end up and what the pressures are, I think could be very interesting. And obviously, the victory points for getting, into North Africa, because it's a harder, longer walk, maybe should be made the slightly more valuable. So that there's an incentive to push further and to be the first ones out rather than being the block in the way of everyone else. I don't feel like that block is all that terribly impressive, but I can tell you this, the Burgundians are causing the Swebby headaches. They can't cut this way. Now, they also, look, the real headache was the fact that these countries, these barbarian forces were submitted to Rome and could not get through. They agreed to park, but beyond that, that's what caused a lot of the traffic jam. But some of the traffic jam is caused by, oh look, the Alani have to make it through Hispania and other people are parking in their way. So I think something that allowed you to choose your card, maybe when you're ready to settle or something like that, and give kind of generic points to you as a barbarian that are just, move through the Roman territory. You get points for each area you're in or whatever. But again, that would require some serious redesign to do that. Something that involved selecting the cards, bidding for them, paying for them at some point. I don't know. That might work. Where you'd be making choices based on what your physical location is. That might help drive this a little better.